There are several Georgian beef stews that contain tomatoes and peppers, each with different names and variations. Examples include the spicy Chashushuli and Salyanka, which is a milder Jewish version. This is a common dish to prepare outdoors over an open fire, but such simple one-pot versions are not what you would find served in a good restaurant. This version I'm showing you here is one I made for a restaurant in Russia, but I've scaled it down to make it only 2 to 4 portions in size.
I have assembled the dried spices here. I have 3/4 of a teaspoon of black peppercorns, half a teaspoon of coriander seeds. And it looks like about the same volume on the plate, but it's because the coriander seeds are smaller. Half a teaspoon of paprika, half a teaspoon of cayenne, and half a teaspoon of coarse salt. These are all going to get put together in the spice mill. Now the meat that I'm using here is actually much better quality than you would normally get in any restaurant. This is tenderloin and it's nice and soft. There's very little fat on it, so it really wouldn't have cooked up especially well as filet mignons because it's really too lean. But it's good for this, and it's nice and soft, and that's what you want in the end, of course. But you don't have to use this. You can use other cuts of meat. You don't want something with tons of fat because you'll end up having it floating in a pool of fat by the time you're done. So about 400 grams of meat. There's the ground spices. Now I also have onion. I rarely tell people to do this, but this onion was cut up in a food processor, and the reason why is because originally this sort of thing would be grated, and that cuts a lot of membranes out of the onion. It chemically makes a difference. I can't explain in this video. Look at my cookbook series if you want to know why. But cut the onion up in a food processor if you have one. In this oddball rare case, usually it's a big no-no. You don't do that. And then this is the ajika, and how much you add is up to you. A good tablespoon and a half is about right for this amount. And then this is just going to get combined real well. You can use your hands too, of course. Use gloves if you're going to use your hands though, because this, especially the ajika, has a real sharp aroma that you won't easily wash off your fingers. Okay, the meat has been marinating for about an hour. The pan is hot. This is the same pressure cooker I'm going to actually cook the meat in. You can cook the meat, brown the meat in a separate pan if you like, if your pressure cooker isn't non-stick or for whatever reason. Now, we're not looking to make this dark brown. We just want to get the pink off of the meat. And you notice that there's just about the right amount to cover the pan on a single layer. If you had more meat, if you were doubling this up in the recipe, then you either need to do this in 2 batches or use a larger non-stick pan first and then transfer it to the pressure cooker. The other seasoning we're going to use here is this Kameli Sinelli, which is a Georgian spice blend. It looks like this in a package. This is pretty much impossible to make yourself because it uses ingredients that are indigenous to Georgia and you can't buy them anywhere else. So just buy this as a spice blend. I rarely say that, but this is an exception. And you can't mix this in with the meat right away because it burns easily. So first we're going to brown the meat, and then this is going to get sprinkled over the top of it. Okay, after 3 or 4 minutes here, I'm going to add about 100 milliliters of water. Kameli Sinelli across the top of the meat. Don't stir it after this because you don't want this to be at the bottom. And then I'm going to put the lid on it and begin the pressure cooking. What we're going to do is we're going to strain the meat off of this and put it to drain, as you'll see. So I have the meat that was removed with a spider on a colander, and this is all the liquid that came from it. I did not pass this through a sieve, and I did not put it through a fat separator. This is everything. The reason I didn't put it through a fat separator is because I'm using quite lean beef here. If you were using beef that had a lot of fat on it, then you'd need to run it through a fat separator because you don't want to have a giant, 2 centimeter pile of 2 centimeter stack of oil on this. Into a hot non-stick pan with the oil. And begin frying the meat. The meat that was previously pressure cooked. Don't stir it around too much because we want to get some good browning on it. But make sure it's a single flat layer. Don't stack it up. Don't use a pan so small that the meat will be stacked up on top of itself. After about 5 minutes, you've got some color on the meat, which is what you want. You don't want to dry it out too much, and certainly don't want to burn it. But I don't know if you can see this, but there's some darkening on the meat, which is good because this is flavor. Now I'm going to add the passata. Kind of move the meat off to the side. Add the passata. And don't stir it around again, kind of like when we're making the tomato sauce. Just let it bubble like this in the middle. And after just a couple of minutes, it starts to dry out like this, form this kind of spider web-like pattern. We're going to add the garlic, chopped up garlic, and the bell pepper. Cook it like this for another couple of minutes. Still the heat's between about 7.5 and 8. It's fairly high, but not the maximum. Cook it like this until the bell pepper starts to soften a little bit. A couple minutes. After 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to add the opal basil in. 3 tablespoons after it's been the stems have removed and the leaves are chopped. Keep it like this for about a minute. Okay, it's been about a minute now. I'm going to add all of that liquid back into the pan. And chopped cilantro. And the whole red chili. I'm not going to do anything to it, just leave the, other than having washed it off, that's it. And finally, a couple of bay leaves, one on either side here. I'm going to turn the heat down so that it's just barely a simmer, about 2, and I'm going to put a lid on it, partially seal it. I'm using this silicone lid right now, which I've grown fond of lately. This almost seals it. There's a little bit of crack around the edge to let the vapor come out. I've turned the heat down to 2 on 110, very low, and I'm going to let it simmer like this for quite a long time. After about an hour, take this off, remove the bay leaves. And we cook it just a little bit more to adjust the thickness, taste it, and adjust the salt. Should be about ready though. Looks pretty good.
I'm very pleased to announce the release of Volume 3, The Focus on Food Chemistry. I want to clear up a few things about these 3 volumes. First, they all contain completely different information. There's no duplication, they're not revisions. When I wrote Volume 1, I had 2.5 years of YouTube videos to cover. People had been asking me for the printed list of ingredients for all of those dishes, and so I obliged. There are recipes with stepwise directions and many tips offered throughout, as well as an extensive history of Russian cuisine over the last 1,000 years, but Volume 1 is very different from Volume 2 and 3. In Volumes 2 and 3, I only had about 9 months of YouTube recipes to cover in each, so I was able to provide stepwise directions for everything. In Volume 2, I included a lot of additional information about cooking and some simple examples of flavor chemistry to set the stage for Volume 3. While Volume 2 hopefully got you thinking about some of the processes that go on in cooking and how flavors are expressed and sensed at the molecular level, the topic was painted with pretty broad strokes to make it easy to digest, pun intended. Volume 3 is a milestone of the series, in which I have included an entire introductory course in food chemistry, which is why Volume 3 is about 70 pages longer than Volume 2. If you just want the recipes, that's okay too. You don't have to read the first few chapters. But if you've ever been curious about what influences tastes and flavors and the rationale for deciding cooking times and temperatures and why things taste different when they're combined in different ways, this book will answer many of those questions. It also paves the way for Volume 4, which will be next year. I'm pleased to announce a new, completely different type of cookbook. If you watch my channel regularly, you know that the recipes I present are usually centered on meat or seafood and seldom vegetarian dishes. This new book is a departure from that norm. Only vegetables, fruits, eggs, and dairy are used in dozens of recipes here. The key here is that these recipes don't taste like typical vegetarian food. This isn't a bunch of salads and bean sprouts wrapped in pita bread. These are completely satisfying, hearty dishes that use the science of food chemistry to produce meat-like aromas and flavors. But don't worry, there's no weird chemicals involved, just ordinary foods and spices that you can get in any grocery store. This really is an entirely new approach. These are flavorful, filling meals produced by a distinctive cooking method and unexpected combinations of ingredients. Once you see how it's done and understand the method, you can apply these preparations to some of your own recipes and transform them into vegetarian dishes too. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link.